So namaskaram and welcome everyone for taking out time today and being present here. We will start with a prayer and lighting the lamp, following which I'll share the agenda for the next 2 hours. So just close your eyes, you can relax and stay connected to your breath. This will take a couple of minutes. तच्छयोरावृणीमहे गातुर्यज्ञाय गातुर्यज्ञपतये दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वञ्जिगातु भेषजं शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषः सहस्राक्षः सहस्रपात् स भूमिन् विश्वतो वृत्वा अत्यतिष्ठद्दशाङ्गुलम् पुरुष एवेदगुं सर्वं यद्भूतैयच्च भव्यम् उतामृतत्वस्येषानः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अतो ज्यायागुश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतं दिवि त्रिपादूर्ध्व उदैत्पुरुषः पादोऽस्येहा भवात् पुनः ततो विश्वं व्यक्रामत् शासनानशने अभि तस्माद्विराडजायत विराजो अधिपुरुषः स जातो अत्यरिच्यत पश्चाद्भूमिमधो पुरः यत्पुरुषेण हविषा देवा यज्ञमतन्वता वसन्तो अस्यासीदाज्यं ग्रीष्म इद्मः शरद्धविः सप्तास्यासन् परिधयः त्रिसप्तः समिधः कृताः देवा यद्यज्ञन्तन्वानाः अवघ्नन् पुरुषं पशुं तैयज्ञं बर्हिषि प्रोक्षन् पुरुषं जातमग्रतः तेन देवा अयजन्त साध्या ऋषयश्च ये तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः सम्भृतं पृषदाज्यं पशुगुस्तागुश्चक्रे वायव्यान् आरण्यान् ग्राम्याश्च ये तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः ऋचः सामानि जज्ञिरे छन्दागुंसि जज्ञिरे तस्मात् यजुस्तस्मादजायत तस्मादश्वा अजायन्त एके चोभयादतः गावो हज्जग्निरे तस्मात् तस्माज्जाता अजावयः यत्पुरुषं व्यदधुः कथिथा व्यकल्पयन् मुखं किमस्य कौ बाहू कावूरूपादावुच्येते ब्राह्मणोऽस्य मुखमासीत् बाहुराजन्यः कृतः ऊरू तदस्य यद्वैश्यः पद्भ्यां शूद्रो अजायत चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षो सूर्यो अजायत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च प्राणाद्वायुरजायत नाभ्या आसीदन्तरिक्षं शीर्ष्णोद्यौ समवर्तत पद्माम्भूमिर्दिशश्रोत्रात् तथा लोकाम् अकल्पयन् वेदाहमेतं पुरुषं महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णं तमसस्तु पारे सर्वाणि रूपाणि विचित्य धीरः नामानि कृत्वाभिवदन् यदास्ते धाता पुरस्ताद्यमुदा जहारः शक्रप्रविद्वान् प्रतिशतस्रः तमेवं विद्वान् अमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था अयनाय विद्यते यज्ञेन यज्ञमयजन्त देवाः तानि धर्माणि प्रथमान्यासन् तेहनाकं महिमानः सचन्ते यत्र पूर्वे साध्या सन्ति देवाः अद्भ्यः सम्भूतपृथिव्यैरसा च विश्वकर्मणः समवर्तताधि तस्य त्वष्टा विदधद्रूपमेति तत्पुरुषस्य विश्वामाजानमग्रे वेदाहमेतं पुरुषं महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णं तमसः परस्तात् तमेवं विद्वान् अमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था विद्यते यनाय प्रजापतिश्चरति गर्भे अन्तः अजायमानो बहुता विजायते तस्य धीरा परिजानन्ति योनिं मरीचीनां पदमिच्छन्ति वेधसः यो देवेभ्य आतपति यो देवानां पुरोहितः पूर्वो यो देवेभ्यो जातः नमो रुचाय ब्राह्मये रुचं ब्राह्मं जनयन्तः देवा अग्रे तदब्रुवन् यस्तैवं ब्राह्मणो विद्यात् तस्य देवा असन्वशे ह्रीश्च ते लक्ष्मीश्च पत्न्यौ अहोरात्रे पार्श्वे नक्षत्राणि रूपम् अश्विनो व्यातम् इष्टं मनिषाण अमुं मनिषाण सर्वं मनिषाण. Thank you. We'll now light the lamp to mark the beginning of Tṛtīya. So I invite Indira ma'am, Arundhati ma'am, and Shri Raman to join. As we begin with today's proceedings. Just an overview of what to expect for the next 2 hours. So we'll be setting the context for why this initiative, Tṛtīya, at this point. And I will invite Indira ma'am to share and set that context first before we articulate our vision, mission, and the intent. Each of us, there are 4 of us who came together to conceptualize and make an initiative of this nature. So we'll also be sharing our individual journey of where we began and what were our inspirations and motivations that brought us to this point. After which we'll also be opening it up the space for all of you. Some of you have joined online and others who are present here to share your evocations and reflections having heard us. And we'll also be having few information regarding what are the upcoming offerings, initiatives, and steps that we are going to take in the next few months before we close for tea. So that's the overview of what to expect right now. And I'd like to start by sharing an introduction and inviting Indira ma'am to set the context for today. So Professor Indira J. Parikh is the president of Antardisha. She had earlier been the founder, president of Flame University in Pune until 2015. And today, as part of Antardisha, she is creating spaces for individuals, collectivities, organizations, and institutions to have dialogue to discover themselves. She has been involved in creating the academic vision of holistic and liberal education and the shaping of the Flame University. She has also conceptualized the models of management development programs anchored in the thresholds of life, life space, and workspace, and life roles and identity. Her focus is on transformation and lifelong learning, development, and growth. She was also the founder of Sumetha's Academy for Human Context. Professor Parikh has done her M.Ed from University of Rochester, New York, and doctorate from Gujarat University. She was a faculty at IIM Ahmedabad for over 30 years and dean from 2002 to 2005. She has taught at INSEAD in France and Texas A&M University in the US, and she has specialized in organization development and design and institution building. She has been a consultant and conducted diagnostic studies for many organizations over the past many years. And she has designed and conducted leadership and institution building programs both in the public and the private sectors as well as in multinational organizations. And she's on the board of many companies as independent director. So on this note, I welcome Professor Indira Parikh to set the context for Tṛtīya. Thank you, ma'am.
Hariprasad on the dais, esteemed guests, invited friends sitting here, and the people who have joined us online. Namaste to everybody and very warm welcome. This is a very big occasion for us because I think we are 4 people from different phases of life, at different points of time in our lives. But there is a common theme that all 4 of us have been searching for a meaning and a purpose to contribute to the society and to ourselves. Something which is relevant and meaningful. Because the common theme which 4 of us have been struggling with is that our country is under immense transformation. It has always been under transformation. And we have been struggling with the identity of what is really Indian. Indian identity has been smashed and bashed to pieces for 1,000 years. And even now, if you see within the country, there are people who are bashing and literally kind of destroying and dispersing the whole nature of what we believe in or what we as identity are. And therefore, we are struggling to figure out what is really Indian and what has been stuffed into our psyche, which is irrelevant, meaningful, and which makes us feel small, and which does not make us release our full potential of every Indian individual. And therefore we came together, each one of us has built some institution somewhere, but have figured out that it has led us to nowhere. Now this all began when Hari came to Ahmedabad and said he wanted to do some podcasts. I did not know what podcasts are. I'm not a technology person. So I said, Hari, explain to me what is podcast. When he explained that, I said, let's talk to Sushanta as well. So Sushanta, we called up Sushanta, and on the telephone we talked a lot and said, let's get together and discuss it some more. Then 4 of us met in Ahmedabad and finally came to a conclusion that we will start something together which will bring about positive transformation in the country. And that's how the name began, Tṛtīya, and that's how the whole concept began. Then we met once more in Ahmedabad in a resort where we spent 4 days together talking about what Tṛtīya meant to us and where we are today with our lives. In order to say this, what Tṛtīya is, I would like to tell a story. We will all share our journey of how we have reached here. We will ask you to share your journey of why you are here, because nothing happens by chance. It has been kind of converging together. The destiny and the universe has been converging together to get us all here. We tried to invite many people. Some could not come. Some were out of the country. But you have been able to come. And the people who have joined on the line have made the effort to join with us. So nothing has happened by chance. It has happened so that all of us somewhere are connected with the journey we are taking in our own lives, and what is important, positive, and relevant to us. So I'll begin with a small story, then I'll hand it over to Sushant, who will begin his journey, and we will then share our journey and then invite you to share your journey of your life and what you are really struggling for or searching for in terms of your own identity. This story is a folklore and a folk tale compiled with many, many stories. And if you will listen to it, you will realize that there are many elements which you might have heard before. The story goes something like this. Once upon a time, there was an island. And on this island lived a wonderful man. Oh, he was a wonderful man, for he knew all secrets of life. He knew why the sun rose in the morning. He knew why the winds blew. He knew why the seasons changed. Oh, he was a wonderful man. And the people of the island revered him quite a bit. And they went to him for little advices of what their problems were. One day, in order to search for more answers to more knowledge, he dashed a cow against a rock to see how the blood ran. Then he was no more a wonderful man. People lived in fear and terror of him because he said he is really no more a wonderful man. The second time he dashed a child against a rock to see what lay behind his skull, and people were more in fear and terror of him saying that he's no more a wonderful man. And they were very much afraid to go to him. And they hid the children when the man passed by. Third time, he drove all the old people out of the island and said they are no more meaningful, they are useless, they don't contribute anything. Then the people were literally terrified of him, of what he was doing. Then he was no more a wonderful man. And people started to say, what is he doing and how has he become so horrible? The moral of the story, my friend, is that knowledge, pure knowledge and more knowledge makes you either a god or makes you a demon, but not a human being. In order to be human, you need to temper knowledge with emotions to make it wisdom. Now, our culture has, and our culture before 1,000 years, when it was really Bharat, had this kind of an education system which brought knowledge and emotions together to create human beings, good citizens of the country, and good human people relating with each other. There were relationships. But today, if we see, and when we were discussing, the families are breaking up, relationships are breaking up, children and parents are kind of not being able to relate with each other. And the technology has added a lot of stress to the lives of people. So we have started to say, okay, now rather than complaining and saying this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, let us do something about it. Let us do some programs where we can discuss this and bring the essence of our identity, Bharatiya identity, to life. And all four of us, Sushant, me, Hari, and another person, Dhruv. Dhruv was a student at Flame University, a very quiet, very sober, very sincere person. He is also struggling with trying to manage his family together and not letting it split up. Or even if it has to split up, to do it in such a meaningful manner that there are no bitterness left. There is a positive element left. So all of us are in spaces and we are in different ages and spaces of our life, trying to get together to invite a set of people who will walk the journey with us. So I will now ask Sushant to share his journey. He's online. He could not come because his wife had a stroke. So he is kind of taking care of her, and therefore he could not come here. So two of us are holding the fort for four of us, and I think it is important that people do what they have to do and join us whenever they can. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and listening to us. Thank you.
Sushant, before you begin, I'll just share an introduction and then you can take on from there. So Sushanta came to the conclusion, after rigorous education in the objective sciences at IIT Delhi and later IIM Ahmedabad, that a prime objective of life was to foster the infinite loop of learning, expression, and then learning. That this was most exciting when the target was to learn about or understand oneself and thereby others as well. To activate this, the cosmos from where we all come and to which we return has gifted us with curiosity. His education was almost entirely focused on the object world, society, illnesses, and others, almost completely excluding oneself. Deeply inspired by the words of Swami Vivekananda and his teacher, Professor Pulin Garg, Sushanta has single-mindedly from 1972 walked this path of exploring, discovering, and sharing the field of this immersive connection of the self and the cosmos. Finding that people share this need and indeed benefit from engaging in this act of self-reflection, expanding one's understanding of self and others, extending to groups, organizations, collectivities, Sushanta started creating opportunities and spaces to learn about self and others, organizations, and human experience itself. He calls his sharing of knowledge in this domain as meta-learning. To his utter delight, he discovered that the path he had chosen resonates with Indic wisdom. He works as a teacher, leadership coach, and development consultant using experiential methodology in the Indic tradition. He has been a co-founder of 2 organizations that do this kind of work and trains people in this practice. Tṛtīya is his 3rd such venture. He has also founded a consulting organization that brings this model of growth and development to business organizations in all sectors, including education. He has named this domain as Energy Work. He is a BTech from IIT Delhi, MBA from Ahmedabad, and worked as a social scientist with ISRO and taught at the Administrative Staff College of India. And he has started his own organization development consulting organization since 1980 called Samudai. And he was probably the first independent OD consultant that India has produced. He has been consulted by a few hundred techno-commercial and educational organizations in India and abroad, including IIT Bombay, NID Ahmedabad, Patna Diocese of the Catholic Church, and several other NGOs. He was also consulted by Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and in 1999, he was invited by a group of Ivy League chair professors in US for a personal and professional growth laboratory. He was a visiting faculty to IIM Ahmedabad from 1973 to 2003, NID from 1993 to 2002, and Anant National University Ahmedabad in the recent past. On that note, over to you, Sushant.
Namaste, everybody. Let me begin with the name Tṛtīya, the 3rd alternative. It's a 3rd alternative because with the logic that the world is now most easy with, the logic which is most popular in most discourses is famously caught with either or. There's the oppressed and the oppressor, the victim and the transgressor. So everything is in 2 things opposing each other, and the only way to solve it is to have it out. One has to kill the other, and one will survive. Whereas the 3rd alternative is to discover in what way simultaneity can be established between these 2. Is it true that everything is either or? Obviously not. And I'm very proud that Indian thought has created this concept of Drashta, the Sakshi, various names, the 3rd eye, which talks of looking at all alternatives at the same time and discovering what is it that unites, what is the context in which these 2 are apparent opposites, and therefore what is the whole picture. So Indian epistemology, largely as far as I've understood it till now, proposes the idea that we must begin with the whole and then go to the parts. Yet, I loved my physics, I loved my engineering passionately. And in that, it was always break things down to parts and then see what the whole will become. And when the whole does not become what you wanted it to become, there's a war. So, to that extent, I've always been a rebel in my mind. Although I behave very decently and don't put people to trouble, but there is a strong rebellion theme that I've lived with. And rebelling against what? I found myself from very early childhood onwards rebelling against the whole business of white superiority and so-called slave mentality of Indians. I used to hear that phrase very frequently as a growing child, and I resented it. I resented it very much. I remember as a child of 7, 8 years of age, when we used to get Life magazine, you know, I don't think Life magazine is around anymore. There's a very prominent American magazine called Life magazine, yeah, like Time magazine. And in that there was oftentimes pictures of Indian roads with animals on them, cows sitting on the road and beggars on the street. You know, so India was portrayed as a dirty, filthy, backward, kind of, you know, insulting, deeply insulting position. So there was this very strong rebellion against that happening. As a result of which in IIT, for most ceremonial occasions, I would wear Indian dress. And since 71, 72, when I started working, of course, I used to go to my ISRO office wearing my shirt and trousers. But whenever we had meetings with the NASA team, I would go in dhoti pajama, dhoti kurta, without fail. And fortunately, ISRO being what it is, a fabulous organization, nobody ever objected, right? So, progressively as I worked, and the second part of my journey, which is very important for me to share here, is I discovered pretty soon, especially after I attended what we call a laboratory, to understand ourselves, personal growth laboratory it used to be called. I discovered that another significant part of my rebellion was that I'd been taught a lot of things about a lot of things. I knew how the fan worked, I knew how the building was constructed, I knew how the engines ran, and I knew how to design aircraft, etc., etc. But I knew nothing about myself. And that troubled me. And when I discovered that there's a way of going about it without having to read books, and I didn't like psychology at all, because what little psychology and sociology I was taught at IIT, in fact, I told the professor, and I think he got a bit offended. I said, you treat human beings like particles in Brownian motion. Human beings are not human beings to you. Whereas I am a human being, and the person I'm studying is also a human being. And I would like to keep that knowing available as part of the process of being human. So, all kinds of rebellions, all kinds of oppositions. And that is also when I discovered the reality that we are much more than just a mind in a body. Yeah? I had experiences of being able to predict the future. Yeah? I had experiences of communicating with people who were not present. I would wake up in the morning in my dorm in IIM, knowing who are the people I will meet in the mess at breakfast, running to class like everybody would be running in the morning. And these were all striking, almost, you know, what in today's language is called mind-blowing realities. I predicted the first Indian team's cricket series win. I don't know if you heard the names of Ajit Wadekar and that bunch of people who went to England, and for the first time in cricket history, India won the series. I had predicted the results. Yeah, and I suddenly realized that these information is coming to me from somewhere. There is, it's almost as if everything is alive and everything is communicating if you are ready to receive that communication. Right? And very interestingly, as all these things were happening, my academic performance also shot up. I was spending much less time and found work much easier as a student in IIM with all this going on. Now that really shook my beliefs and constructed reality as I had built up of the nature of the world and nature of human beings. And this was very early on. I was just 25. Hence, my life has been driven by curiosity. Yeah? And I took upon myself a career in which I had no formal education. I've loved it. It's been greatly adventurous. I've made films for television. I've designed school curriculum for villages. I made a film to demonstrate how to use Indian formats for making developmental communication for villages. So it's been a nicely adventurous, always doing things which I've never done before. Yeah. Where am I today? Why Tṛtīya? We've been working with Indian identity, we've been working with individual identity. We've done what in today's language is called inner transformation. So I've coached several people from different ages, different stages in life. I've helped transform organizations. I'm still doing that. So where am I today? I'm today actually at a very happy place. In the 90s, I was very depressed with what was happening in India. And I constantly kept harping on this point that India doesn't have a vision. You know, as I perceived the government that time was going short-term solutions to short-term problems and nobody looking at the long term. So there was no vision and all kinds of convenience things were being done. At one stage, I was put onto the committee of Indira Gandhi National Open University for their MBA course. And I had by then discovered or gotten convinced that we have been taught distorted history or no history, worse still. Now, if you take a man away from any man or woman, human being, away from his history, what are you doing to him? If I take away your history and make you blind to your history, you will have to follow the construction of reality that I give to you. You will not be able to see reality as you see it. So you will be under conflict and feel like a victim all the time. Yeah. So when I proposed this course in history for MBA students, the committee turned around and played a trick with me. The chairman of the committee, my old professor, Professor Parikh, very respected professional in his times and later, prolific writer. So he said, Sushant, you write it, you write the book. So I said, I'm no historian. He said, then this won't happen. So I said, okay. I stopped all other work and started studying history. I had myself never studied history except in school till class 8. When I studied the history of India, I realized that we've been, in a sense, we've been had. We've been fed the wrong story and believed that that was our truth. And in that, we were humiliated, given a dirty picture of ourselves and struggling with that humiliated identity. Fortunately, within my own lifetime, I see that that has changed or is changing. And today I'm strongly in the mood to accelerate this change process. So let me talk about this change process or change perspective which I'm holding. I have no doubt today that the world outside of ourselves, objective as it may sound, is nothing other than the result of human kind's collective imagination of the desired and the hated. So that which we desire the most and that which we hate the most are both getting constructed. It's all originating from our collective imagination. All right? Our civilization, the Sanatani civilization, is becoming progressively clearer as a distinct and different perspective on life, existence, and the world. My world and the world. So when I say my world, it's a subjective reality. And when I say the world, it's supposed to be an objective reality. But I create objectivity with my own eyes. So the objective world is a creation, whereas the subjective world is actually the reality, so far as I'm concerned. We in India hold nature as sacrosanct. Nature is the womb from where we come and the soil to which we return. In the Abrahamic view, it sees nature as something to be conquered. Whether that nature is within ourselves or whether it is nature out there, the essential move towards nature is to conquer it, harness it, exploit it. Yeah. Whereas ours has been that who am I to exploit and conquer nature? Right? I'm a part of nature. We see ourselves not as separate and under the command of a divinity, but as a part of divinity itself. To us, life is sacrosanct. Life is not something to be sacrificed for the sake of a belief. Of course, under duress, if there's a war has to be fought, we will fight. But life is not something to be sacrificed for the sake of sacrificing. In the matter of our living process, whether it's diet, health, civil society, education, social psychology, families, etc., we have to learn how to hold together the long and the short-term challenges. For this, we no longer need Lord Mountbatten, Winston Churchill, Henry Kissinger, George Soros, and their honored ilk to guide us. We will have to, if necessary, walk alone and pay the price, not any longer be guided like blindfolded captives into domains defined by Abrahamic civilization, and it is its, but crumbling ethos. Tṛtīya will focus on and foster awareness, not just knowledge, but knowledge plus feelings, experience of our connection with nature or cosmos. We are convinced that, that man and nature are not separate binary items, that each human being carries the cosmos within, just as every drop of the ocean carries salt within. There is no doubt today that we are recovering from the trauma of colonization. It is a process that is beginning in India, that is Bharat. A resurgence of consciousness is called for, to mobilize our consciousness to operate from its highest status. A very dear student of ours has sent in a beautiful WhatsApp message in which he says go is an adjective in Sanskrit which means the highest. So the highest spire on the temple is called Gopuram. Likewise, Gomati is the highest state of consciousness. So our aim is to operate from the highest state of consciousness. Yeah. It is time for us to state our experience, the sense we make of the world, and the reality as we see it, without the compulsion of having to be corralled into frameworks dictated by the gun, the cane, the whip, or the sword. There is enough data to support the position that we have within us the eternal and the infinite. I would like to take a small digression here. This eternal and the infinite insights have been around with us in the Sanatan perspective as saying we are indestructible. The Atman and Brahma, Atman and Brahman are the same. Atman is equal to Brahman is an essential doctrine of Sanatan. So that's our position based on our heritage. And there are now enough anecdotal evidence coming in from the world which shows that this is more likely than otherwise it's true. Right? Dr. Brian Weiss, and many of you may have heard of his works, has gone into past life therapy, past life regression, and demonstrated the validity of this, including dramatic experiences of sudden healing. So he reports a case of a lady scientist who had a severe back problem in her 50s, used to walk with a walking stick, had come to him for treatment, and then discovered that in her previous life she had been a soldier in a European army and had been damaged in the back with a spear. Getting in touch with this experience healed her injury, and slowly her hair turned black. Now, obviously, the theory of proofs will not be happy with this, but how can anyone deny this reality which became apparent, obvious, and evident? So we are not just bodies with a mind, but we are a consciousness with a body to help express, learn, and serve. We have a Purusharth. Our sole purpose in life is not the acquisition of wealth and power. Our purpose in life is fourfold, not acquisition and power. Right? And to express is our essential need, and to learn and serve is our interface with society and the others. In my practice, I've encountered all right, let me go one step further. I'm making fairly sharp statements, and I need to bring it down to some visible realities. In my practice, where I've worked with individuals in my coaching sessions and with groups and organizations, I found that trauma is quite widespread. We all have traumas in our lives. And there are two unconscious reactions we have to trauma. One is not all that unconscious, but also under social pressure. We often deny our trauma. We go into denial as if it hasn't happened. Yeah. And the second is to own up this trauma. Denial of the trauma creates conditions for the trauma to keep getting reproduced. Acceptance and owning up of the trauma creates the softness, the receptivity, and the ground for healing and transformation to take place. Collectively today, as I find, including in my own classmates, half my classmates from both IIM and IIT are abroad. They're no longer Indians. You see, it's a very interesting experience. Almost every day, we have battles on our WhatsApp groups about. There was a very interesting conversation we had over the last 1 month. The Americans were asking, was it a good idea that we came away? And was it a better idea to have stayed back, and vice versa? Yeah. So there are a whole lot of us elite, educated, especially educated English speaking Indians who deny the trauma and who say, don't go back to the past, there's nothing to do with the past. Don't be a Hindu revivalist, which is a phrase which our then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru had brought up in response to the whole idea of reconstructing the Somnath temple. He was dead against it. In fact, he didn't go for it, and he tried to prevent the then President Rajendra Prasad from going to the inauguration of the reconstruction and inauguration of the temple. Rajendra Prasad nevertheless went there and did it. So there's a whole set of educated, talented, wonderful people, Hindus, Sanatanis, who, if they had their way, would pretend as if there is no history and as if there is no religion-based politics in the world. Whereas today what's happening across the world is very heavily influenced by the war of religions. In fact, as I was talking about my prescience, in 2002, a colleague of ours asked me, Sushant, you are working with so many people, what is the prediction of the world? I said, don't ask me such big questions. I'm not a soothsayer nor an astrologer. So he said, no, I'm sure you can make a extrapolation or a prediction. So I said, all right, the best way to answer the most difficult questions is to close my eyes. So I closed my eyes, but very soon I opened it again because I saw something terrifying. I saw a terrifying picture as I closed my eyes in 2002 of a world divided exactly as per lines of religion, of the Abrahamic and the Indian Sanatani. I also saw communism as a religion. So there was 4 religions, Islam, Christianity, communism, Judaism, 5th, and Sanatani, Dharmic. And I saw these at war with each other, one another. Everybody is fighting with everybody. Right? And that is pretty much what's happening even today. Fortunately, there are several Indians who are waking up to it, and there are some brilliant thinkers who are contributing to this idea. And I subscribe to this, that if we can promote and foster owning up of this trauma. Owning up of trauma does not mean you need to go up and kill somebody. Owning up of the trauma is best epitomized by the South African experience of truth and reconciliation. So, one of the things I would like to push for in this Tṛtīya organization is to promote owning up of this trauma, which would then facilitate constructively working out the solutions that we need to deal with it. Yeah. So currently there's a divided house. I would like to put my weight into the part of that house which owns up this trauma and fosters the owning up of this trauma. Those who are denying the trauma look at all problems as short-term problems which can be resolved through the use of force. I do not see that happening. Yeah. It's owning up of the trauma and processing it that restores self-worth. So I would like to direct my energies through our programs in Tṛtīya to help own up the trauma and cultivate those aspects which lead to the healing and to the solution of the healed. I think I will pause here and hand it over to Hari to progress the proceedings.
Thank you, Sushant. Thanks for sharing your journey and learnings along the journey with us. So as I said at the start, we will briefly share about what brought us here and the inspiration. And so I'd like to very briefly share what brought me here over these years. And so I come from near Kochi. I grew up in a town near here, Tṛtīya, and lot of my early inspiration and shaping of who I am happened through my studies with Chinmaya. So I studied in Chinmaya Vidyashala, and through the Balavihars as a child, later through Yuva Kendra, through the teenage years and college years. One of the things that really inspired me and helped me anchor in the sense of belonging of this land was the very innovative, interesting ways in which traditional knowledge, in my case it was mostly Bhagavad Gita and the wisdom from Vedanta and Upanishads, how it was articulated by Swami Chinmayanji for a youngster like me, and also the host of acharyas and volunteers who helped shape experiences through camps, through workshops, treks, where we were able to experience some parts of this wisdom enough to carry forward that motivation as we grew up. And I remember one of the mottos at that time for the Chinmaya Yuva Kendra was Atmano Mokshartham Jagat Hitayacha. So for the through self-realization and also in service of the world, for the betterment of the world. And I think that somehow that motto stayed with me as I grew up. And incidentally, when I finished my graduation, I landed up after studying arts in a technology company, the early days of Google in India. And Google had this motto, do no evil. So while we were doing something which was very technical, there was a certain sense of storytelling in the organization that in doing what we are doing, we are really making the world a better world and things like that. So there was a certain sense of alignment I felt in the initial days that, okay, some part of what I got inspired by, it is still met. But soon enough, that was, it turned out to be something which was not as fulfilling as I expected it to be. And in my mid-20s, I spent a few years chasing a childhood dream to become a civil servant. And like how it was in those days, went to Delhi and studied for 3-4 years, trying to clear the civil service exam. And I could recall that a lot of learnings and practices which got integrated by then into my life through Chinmaya helped to stay anchored. Even when one does not clear the exams and you can see the savings go down because you're not working in the prime of your 20s, while all our friends are growing professionally and everything. So I found that ultimately you need some kind of practices to really anchor and reflect, so that when the moment of choice making comes, the choice can be owned up fully. And also there is enough space we can create for ourselves to make different choices and experiment with life. So a lot of that process for me happened, and I discovered these choices and choicefulness through practices which I derived from Indian knowledge traditions at that point. So later when I did not clear the civil services, I rejoined corporate world. And so there was a phase where I was working back in the tech world, and that was when I incidentally, purely for health reasons, landed up in a yoga class and met my first set of teachers in my serious study of yoga. And I started my journey into the tradition of Sri Krishnamacharya and Deshikachar in the yoga world. And that was really something which for me personally was like bridging some kind of a gap between my head and body. Because while learning as a child through Chinmaya really stimulated the intellect, I felt a need for really anchoring in the body, of how the body is communicating, and really honoring the wisdom that the body carries as we live life and accumulate experiences. So to that extent, the yoga tradition, yoga practices, working with the breath, working with the body, really help to discover a way to process some of the disappointments I faced in life, and also replenish and re-energize. And it was almost very magical to see that as I started the practice of yoga, it also created a parallel shifts in the outer reality in terms of possibilities I started seeing, the opportunities I started getting. And it was also the time when I met my first set of mentors in the process work space, applied behavioral science. And I became a part of an organization called Ritambhara, where we worked a lot with Indian mythology, Purana, Itihasa traditions. And it was also a very coming of a full circle in a way, because I remember growing up working extensively with Ramayana and Mahabharata in Chinmaya through quiz competitions and a lot of other camps and everything. And the integration of yoga, applied behavioral science, and Purana traditions, especially working with the archetypes, really had a very healing, profound healing impact for me. And so there was this one phase of working very deeply with this combination, facilitating such journeys for many others in that process. And that also took me to start my own journey in the internship in process work with Sumethas, one of the organizations Sushanta and Indira co-founded long back. And it was at that point, just to make it very brief, sometime last year, as I started more of my coaching and leadership practice, I started getting women professionals who were coming with a very specific and almost consistent need that while they have achieved a very high degree of external professional achievement, they were feeling a sense of loss of their feminine self and wanting to understand how can they be a whole person when they go out into the world, especially in the workplace. And since some of them were my friends, and when I started working with them, I was also feeling a little bit at loss of what is this pattern? And I started doing some research with other friends on what are the available interventions or processes in today's time for women leaders. And when I went through most of those materials and syllabuses, I found that a lot of them, or most of them, are actually designed to make women professionals more like men. So it was all, nothing was actually in alignment with what we look at from a yoga or an inner work perspective, where the focus is on really discovering what is one's swabhava. And when I don't have the ability to really look at myself as who I am, and with a certain swabhiman, or a sense of pride in that, everything else that arises from that space will feel disconnected and split. And that was something that I was experiencing in many of these coaching clients. And it was in that context that I came across a paper that Indira ma'am wrote many years back on women leaders and the kind of dilemmas they face and the kind of archetypes they might fit into from a historical and mythological perspective. And that really fascinated me. So what she shared at the start, I met her last year, was in that context. So I took an appointment and went to Ahmedabad to discuss about what she really meant in that paper and how can that be integrated into a women's leadership kind of a program that we could create eventually. And of course, that's what started this, that was the starting point of Tṛtīya also, where Sushanta joined, and we had many, many long discussions. And apart from starting a new venture, I think for me it has been an immense learning to have listened and engaged with both of them for the last many months, and creating a container of this kind, something like Tṛtīya, I think is a very significant and critical step personally for me, because what I have in my limited experience realized is this is not the work of any one person or an organization. It is something that is to be done at a collective level, and it is very important to have an ecosystem of like-minded individuals and organizations who can move together in this direction. And to that extent, I'm very grateful to all of you who have also come here. I know many of you from many different spaces, and I know there is a certain alignment that we all share in how we look at the world and the concerns we hold. So obviously, while I know that one's own personal experience can't be extrapolated to the world, there is a certain shraddha or faith I have developed over time that when faced with dilemmas, dharma sankatas, double binds of either I can do only this or that, there are practices and there are ideas in our wisdom traditions which can really help us see a third way, a more creative possibility, which can be more dharmic, which can be not a zero-sum game where either I win or you lose, or you win and I lose, or both of us win and the context loses. But there could be a way where we can act in a way that can be really sustaining, energizing, and enlivening for both ourselves, the other, and the context simultaneously. And I hope together with the Tṛtīya team, as well as all of you who will eventually join us on this journey, we will be able to discover such choices to live a more creative and fulfilling life. Thank you. So I invite Indira ma'am to also briefly share before we open it up to the group.
I have 82 years of life, but I'm going to tell you 4 or 5 major incidents which have impacted my life to be who I am. The very first incident is my birth. I was born in a village in Kochi, in a home and not in a hospital. So my mother kept saying, "You are the cheapest to be born." She said, "I paid 5 rupees for your birth. If it was a boy, I would have had to pay 10. Because you are a girl, we paid 5. And now that has if I look back my life, my whole translation of that word is, I give more than I receive. For example, even in IIM, whatever the salary, because of consultancies and all, we used to share our money with institute. So my whole time salary, which institute has given me, I have returned it back to them with my consulting. So I have worked free in IIM. And that has been my life pattern, that I do not like to take, but I'd like to give. And I receive less and I give more. Even in Flame, though the salary was very good, my fees were also very good in consulting, so I returned back the salary which was given to me. And the chairman once told the founder donor, she is no cost to us, so let her continue. And I was, as I said, I was born in a small village, small town in Kutch. We come from a Sanatan family. We are Kshatriyas and we are Arya Samaji. My grandfather became Arya Samaji when he was in his 50s. So when we were born, we grew up doing home Havan every day. Every morning and evening we did Havan. Even today, I can do a Havan better than a Pandit can do because my pronunciations are very, very right. And the shlokas are also very right in terms of sequence and everything. So when my son came this time, he says, Mal, do not call a Panditji, we'll do the Havan ourselves. You do the Havan and I will listen and I will sit with you. And that's what we did. And this is the first incident. The second, which has impacted me the most to become a teacher, is in my family, my eldest uncle was a terror. He was actually a terrorist. He used to shout and scream so much to everybody that everybody was terrified of him. But my eldest aunt was a teacher. And when she came, he became a mouse. He would just stand up in attention whenever she entered the room. And if there was a big conflict going on, I would go and tell my Buaji, chalo, Bapuji bahut gussa ho raha hai. And I would drag my aunt to where my uncle was shouting and screaming. The minute she entered, he quieted down. So I thought, even as a child, becoming a teacher is the best thing to do because the terrorists are afraid of you or they give you the respect they should be giving. That's not the state of affairs today, but that was it when I was growing up. So that was the second major impact. The third major impact of my life is to take life in a joyful manner and without feeling ashamed was when I got married. I got married and we went to the US, but before going to the US, we had gone to Switzerland. I had never seen an escalator in my life. So when we got down from the airport and used the escalator, I went up and down 5 times. I told my husband, can I go up again? And he would say, okay. And I would go up again, come down, go up again. I did it 5-6 times. That was at 2 o'clock at night. And my husband just watched and smiled at the silly girl who was doing this at 2 o'clock at night. But he did not say anything and finally said, chalo, chalo, I'll bring you back here tomorrow again. And then we went to the hotel. So the question is that you can do foolish things, you can do things which are generally not expected of you, but don't be ashamed of it. So that is the third major impact of my life. Fourth is I went to to get my 1 degree, I went to 5 colleges. Finally, I got my degree in University of Rochester in New York because there was a liberal arts program. I could attend that class and get my degree. Then did my master's in education. And finally did my PhD at Gujarat University. So education has been the foundation of my life. And all my life I have been in education. When I was about 8 years old, my father said, you know, you are good at study, so why don't you teach the workers' children? My father had a textile mill, so there were 25 children who I used to gather on a Thursday, on a Sunday, because Thursday was a holiday at that time. So 9 to 12, I used to run a school. And my father prepared a ground with a shed and brought 25 those slates. That time we were using slates and those white pens for the children. And there were some of them older than me. And when I started my career as consulting, most of the time the participants were much older than I was. And I had to deal with the elder participants who were very much concerned whether I would be the right professor to give them the knowledge which was to be given to them. So all of these put together, and one more thing which has made the whole thing about I started Flame was at the age of 8 we had gone to Shanti Niketan to see the Shanti Niketan school. When we were reaching there, from long distance we could hear the ghungroos and the children singing. And that memory stayed with me. And when I started Flame and I saw the land, that was the imagery I had, that children would be coming in buses, singing songs coming to the campus. And it happened that way. So all these have put together to do something which is meaningful and relevant not only to me but to the people around me. Now, I have been part of 3-4 institutions, starting it and started institutions. And every place, at some point of time, I got disconnected and disinterested because there were processes in that institution which just weren't right. See, there were conflicts, and I realized I cannot participate in a conflict and fight till the end of the logic, to the dead end of the conflict. So I cannot tolerate conflicts which are senseless, meaningless, and leaves a lot of hurt in people. So my idea of working is to invite people and confront them to things which need to be confronted, but not that it leaves bitterness and it leaves a anguish about big fights and I cannot find that meaningful. So I have left kind of 3 institutions which I was very integrally part of, took major roles, organized international conferences, did a lot of things, but finally I left without any bitterness that no, I just don't like to be part of such an institution. So when this whole prospect of Tṛtīya came and we were sitting down and discussing what we would be doing, and especially women's work, because I was the first person to start Women Managers Program in IIM after a lot of arguments and a lot of resistance to starting a Women Managers Program. But that program has changed my life because until then I was working largely with men, and I was kind of losing my femininity and becoming like a man, talking like a man, loudly, etc., etc. So in order to get in touch with my own femininity and my own identity, I give credit to all the women's work that I have done in India, in Africa, in Asia, in China also. That women across carry a certain patterns of behavior which I think gives them a lot of stress, a lot of indignity, and a lot of hurt. And therefore my large part of my effort has gone into working with women to help them discover their positive strengths and not necessarily fight to get, and not necessarily freedom and 50% space in the world of men, but how to be feminine and yet be assertive and do things. And I think when we talk about Tṛtīya and the third way, I think it is important to discover a way which will make women free, or human beings free to be themselves and not imitate. And my most concern is the colonized things which have been stuffed into our psyche for hundreds of years and made us feel small, inadequate, and destroy our positives and innovation and knowledge generation. And every point I can see right from the nursery school, where the children have colonized mindsets, the teachers have colonized mindsets, and they cannot really see what is really positives of the culture which can be translated and brought into schools. And once you have, for example, what the colonials did was even changed our poetry, our lifestyle of young children. If you look, what are the young children taught today? Baba Black Sheep and Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars. But what did we do when the colonials weren't there? When the child's birthday was there, we did puja, we did bhajans, we gave food to hungry children. This is what we did. All that is lost, and we do Baba Black Sheep and exchange of gifts, return gifts which are expensive, and there is a whole lot of competition in giving gifts to the children. And I think this is what needs to change, right from the nursery school to the educational system, where colonial mindset has really destroyed our positives of our culture, positives of our own identity, and discovered the positives of the identity which lies dormant in us. And I think it took me a lot of time and struggle to let go of so many of the negatives and discover the positives, to be able to make a statement and be able to offer what I can offer without feeling small, inadequate, or ashamed. No, how can I say this? This has become stopped in my life. How can I do this? How can I say this has stopped in my life? I just say it and I just do what I believe is right. And if it turns out to be wrong, I apologize. But I do take a stand, and I think people need to be able to take a stand and do things which they feel are right. And I think that is what we are trying to do in our training programs, women's programs, leadership programs, and I have developed a model of leadership. See, after Flame, I took 7 years to develop an assessment scale of leadership, which gives you your horoscope of leadership in life, in social relations and work. And I think we need to do something with the families which are breaking up, families which are being torn by a lot of things which they don't understand, which are largely anti-cultural, which are anti-Indian, which are we need to discover the positives of the family dynamics. And the research that I have done on a book called Unsung Heroes. These were stories about people who were crippled and almost at the deathbed, how the families have supported them to come back to life. And I think families, Indian families especially, are very important in our lives, and we need to reintegrate them into our, and I believe that in Tṛtīya we will attempt to do that. So, having said this, now it is time that I will stop here, and we will ask each one of you to share with us what has been your journey. And if you have questions, you are most welcome to ask questions. But we would like to invite you to share your journeys. The very fact that you are here is not by chance, is by some purpose and some meaning. So hopefully as you start talking, you will discover why you are here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. So as we shared, now we are opening up the space for the group. We have few of the participants online also. Please introduce yourself, and also the idea is to check in with your own journey, and any reflections and questions are also welcome. Over to you. Rajkrishnan, yes. You can unmute. Yeah.
So I think, first of all, I'll have to explain why I'm here. It's because I was invited by Hari and we met about a month ago at the National Conference of Indian Knowledge Systems, where both of us were in the same theme room where our presentations were being evaluated. Of course, he made his presentation and I was highly impressed by that. And then we got talking and, of course, we hit off very well. The second reason why I'm here is Professor Indira Parikh. Now, of course, I spoke to her on phone, but now she sees me in person. And she saw me in person 12 years ago when she was my PhD examiner at the Aligarh Muslim University, though I would have had a mop of hair then, ma'am, which is not there now. And of course, I did not know that she was coming for my, PhD final examination. See, I've always been a lover of books, and of course, she was very kind in the way she evaluated me. And thanks to her, I am a doctorate. But I faintly recall after the examination and, when I got back home, that I seemed to have a book of hers from my collection. So I pulled it out and I pulled it out again today. So here, ma'am, is a book that you wrote many years ago, which is Crossroads of Culture. Okay. And I'm going to pull out a sentence from the last few paragraphs saying, quote, "The present model continues to favor techno-informative education. This model has its advantages and can, as it has done, produce significant results without creating a sense of pride in the nation." So what you said in 1995 still echoes true today. And I think, we have a lot of work to do in that direction. So I thought, that's the very strong connect I have, with the two people that I know. Of course, I did get introduced to Sushant as he spoke, but you, I know in person. Coming to my journey and very quickly, I was born in a very, very traditional family based out of Delhi. We used to have, the rituals that are the Vedic rituals and yagyas every other day, in fact. And I've grown up with a lot of, Sanskrit Panditri, where you have the typical South Indian traditional Brahminical chanting that was, what we grew up with. But interestingly, my father was an agnostic and a scientist, and my mother was highly spiritual. It was my grandfather who was ritualistic. And therefore, I've grown up with these three influences. And as we all become rebels at the age of 16, 17, I was a rebel too. And, have been a seeker over the years and, have been able to find some answers over a period of time. So my professional career was, professional education was in engineering. And then many years after engineering, which is when Professor Indira Parikh sort of interviewed me at the age of 46 or 47 when I was doing my PhD. When I started my PhD, it was 52 when I got my PhD. It was in the area of leadership because professionally I had moved out of engineering and into leadership development. I was at that point in time the head of leadership development in IBM and was responsible for all the leadership development that happens for emerging leaders, for team leaders, and all grades of leaders across the entire pipeline. And then I was into assessment and development centers. But coming to some of the dramatic transformations, which actually brings me here, is, I would say, being a seeker and a trainer and a corporate trainer, one always has a sense of living up to what you're teaching others. Otherwise, you don't really come true credibly. And therefore, while we teach lofty things, it has always been a catch up with the lofty things we teach. And that itself has drawn me, hopefully, higher and higher in the scale of my own expectation of myself. So I was in a particular crisis in 2015 when, personally, professionally, everything seemed to be, totally, difficult to sort out. And that is when I resorted to something that I learned across my entire field of spiritual endeavor across life, which is I chanted the Vishnu Sahasranamam and the Bhagavad Gita for 3 years continuously. And of course, I have attended many lectures of Swami Chinmayananda, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, Swami Ranganathananda of the Ramakrishna Mutt over my, teens and, younger years. And they all came back to me. And I would say that, that truly, brought me to speed with my own self to use a modern phrase, and to be in a position to actually go back to one family tradition, which was the devotion to Ramana Maharshi, which my grandfather had. Despite his ritualism, he had personally met Ramana Maharshi, and I had inherited all my grandfather's books. So I pulled out those books, and then at the age of 60, I'm now 63, I sincerely went into the Ramana Maharshi's entire who am I? His simple message is, who am I? The upasana is who am I? And the meditation is who am I? The tapasya is who am I? And I have been into that, and that has wrought dramatic changes in my life to the extent that is unimaginable. And I'll share that very briefly, which is, of course, we all know that we got very, very comfortable with online engagements because of COVID. And one of the online engagements I started was with a digital platform named Indica, with which you might be familiar. And, unbelievably for me, but of course, probably logically, because I have all those kinds of resources, which I had with me, but may not have fully understood, they suddenly started making sense to me. And I did a series of very provocative programs like leadership lessons from the Vedas, leadership lessons from the Upanishads, leadership lessons, not these spiritual ones, leadership lessons from the Mahapuranas, leadership lessons from the Itihasa, Ramayana, Mahabharata, the Panchatantra, Hitopadesha, Kavya, Raghuvamsham, then the Dharma Shastras. And very recently, I completed, the entire 593 verse exposition of the Vidura Niti, which is what led me to the entire conference, where incidentally my presentation for that theme was adjudged to be the best. So, I'm at a very interesting stage where, as Professor Indira Parikh has been doing throughout her life, which is her inspiration, the deep desire is to give whatever I have learned and to share with whoever is aligned to the Indic thought process. And I found a great, great valuable companion in Hari. We met when he came to Bangalore. I was to come, but I, somehow found it difficult to personally come to the space that you are in physically. But I'm very happy to be here, and I am really looking forward to any kind of engagement in any possible way that the founders deem fit. And I would be very happy to contribute in that sense. So that's what brings me here. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody here? Arundhati.
So I didn't know we were going to be sharing about ourselves, but looking at where I come from, I was born in Surat and grew up in Mumbai. And my early first few years, I went to school, I remember, before the age of 3. It wasn't a school because you know how a mother will go back to the mother's place for birth. So when my younger sister was going to be born, my mother went back to Surat. And there, at the end of the lane, there was one Gandhian lady who was running a nursery, a play school kind of a thing, a nursery. And one day when she'd come home and she told my grandfather that, okay, she's here at home, why don't you send her? So I went there, and because I was the youngest, the others were 5 years and this thing, no one was paying any attention to me. So I could play with all the toys that were around while my ears would be glued to whatever was happening. I could take on whatever activity I liked. And I realized that within 2 months I'd picked up the entire alphabet in Gujarati. And the moment you pick up the alphabet in your mother tongue, you start reading. Because you can read ka, so you can read ka, then you know kaka, or anything, anything that you... So I discovered that I could start reading boards and things like that. And then from that I went on to learning reading. And then finally when I was put in an English school, I was a bit too old for then. But my uncle had persuaded my father that English school is superior. And my father, who had put my elder brother in a Gujarati school, had now decided that I should go to an English school. And that's how I started in an English school. So I spent the first year in my first grade class without even knowing the alphabet. Okay? So I realized that I had a cousin with whom I would sit. Why am I relating this? I'll come to it in a little later. I don't know why I thought of relating this. But I would want to go to the teacher and tell her I want to go to the bathroom because you had to ask for the permission, right? So I'd ask my cousin and she would tell me, please may I go to the bathroom? And then I'll go to the teacher and the teacher would have a stern expression and a ruler at the table and look up and say, like, why have you come? And I would forget what the sentence is and run back the thing and sit down. Then I'd relearn the thing a few times more and then I'd go to the teacher again. But I realized that until then, all the teachers that I had come across from the kindergarten to until whatever years of ages that I'd spent were all Gandhian teachers in a Gujarati medium school who would not even leave alone yell at a child. There was no question of yell. Even a child was referred to as Ben. So my name is Arundhati and I would be called Arundhati Ben by the teachers. I would be addressed with so much respect. And that would not be just me, all children would be. From that to move to an English school where there was a Christian teacher and who marched up and down with a ruler in the hand and shouted and used the ruler to bang on the table or punish a child was something I had never ever thought was possible. Very fortunately for me, I had an uncle who had been, the cousin that I was sitting with, right? Her father. He as a child had got slapped by a teacher and had gone deaf in 1 year. So when he heard this terror story from me saying, I don't want to go to school because the teacher, he said that the teacher will never ever touch you. And it seems he had gone to the principal and told the principal that if a teacher ever hits me or his daughter, either of us, he would be going straight to the police. Okay. He had threatened that in those days, and that's why, yes, we were never. But to a child who is, even if another child is being scolded or hit, it's traumatic to the entire class, not just to the child who is being hit. So that aside, what I had decided at that age of life, I think Sushanta was talking about being a rebel. So I decided at that stage that legitimate aim in life, a goal of life, is joy is the goal of life, right? So every child knows that joy is the goal of life, right? It doesn't have to be so many words. But I realized that to trouble the teacher is one of the legitimate aims of, because the more mischief you create, the more the teacher's trouble, the more fun you have. So completely a lesson that they might not have thought I'm learning, but that was one of those. That's where I think my rebellious nature started. Also, despite all of this, when I would be asked as a child, what do I want to be when I grow up, I used to say teacher. But at a certain stage, maybe it may have been the 7th or the 8th class, when I realized that if as a teacher I encountered another child like me, of course I knew I would never be a terrorizing teacher, but if I encountered a child like me, I was incorrigible. So what would I do? So I decided, okay, I won't be a teacher. Okay? Leave aside that what life has in plan is something other than what you only decide. So I ended up going for physiotherapy, but ended up also becoming academic lecturer and assistant professor and a professor in physiotherapy. So I ended up being a teacher anyway. That's how, and at that stage, there must have been something in me which makes me want to teach. So my son would tell me sometimes, when he was a kid, that it's useless to ask a question to her, because if he asked me this or something about something, and I would go into a lecture mode. A lecture not about doing this or not, but explanation of what is, a reasoning based on this thing. And he'd say, no, I don't want a lecture. I just want to know this or this, what should I do? And I would say, no, it's not so simple. There is this reasoning and there's this reasoning and you can apply, and I would go into a lecture mode. So anyway, that tendency probably still continues. My very big influence in my life was Swami Chinmayananda, and whom I met much later than my husband Sundar met him as a Balvihar child and Yuva Kendra. But I met him when I was doing my master's in Mumbai. And that had a significant impact, because if you think of the medical school of those times, everything, drugs are freely available, lifestyle is quite easy, and it would have been gone to a very different direction with my rebellious nature. But because of coming to the Gita Gnana Yajna and the lectures of Swami Chinmayananda, I remember the first time on Chopati Sands, attending Gita chapter 13 of Gurudev's 7-day Gita Gnana Yajna. At the end of that 1 week, I knew that I was a different person, that I would never be the same person that I was before that 1 week. Whether I would get moksha or not, I don't know. But at least I would no longer be, it would never be possible for me to go back. That much I knew. I attended, subsequent to those Gita lectures, I attended several camps, including the retreats with Swami Chinmayananda in Siddhabari in Himachal Pradesh. And we would spend time not just during the lectures, but even afterwards, and you realize that there's a wealth of knowledge that you just pick up by being with such a person. You, of course, learn certain formal things, but you learn a lot of informal things. And those things that you learn then become, and as though you have something very valuable to share with the society, which otherwise you might not know. So when I went for my PhD, I was still a physiotherapist, and I went for my PhD to Canada. I'd done my master's in India, and I went for my PhD. What I realized is that when I would participate in a mandir, that was an informal mandir, the Hindus would get together once a month and hold a bhajan group or something. And once some occasion happened and they asked me to speak something, and I could spontaneously say something which was like quite eye-opening to the people. So they started regularly telling me, and I became a part of the interfaith group representing the Hindu faith. So that, all those kind of things, and that came just rubbed off by being a Yuva Kendra member, and being with Swami Chinmayananda. So you realize I knew myself how little I knew, but to the people around it felt, oh, I know a lot. Where it wasn't true, I knew a lot. It was like I knew some bit, a small bit, and that itself was so valuable to people who had never encountered it at all. So, so that kind of an activity continued. And another thing that my son I should attribute to is the part about storytelling. Actually, before that, as a child also, I listened to stories from my grandfather and my aunts and uncles. On the street side, there's an Otla in Surat, and after dinner, people would sit out and people would pass and informally stop, and there would be stories swapped. My grandfather had been a freedom fighter and had also been a municipal councillor and all that. So lots of stories would be happening. So those stories, but I realized with my son that he would not eat unless some story was being told. So with my son telling stories, I became a storyteller. Also, I realized that he was growing up in the US at the time, and unless I told cultural stories to his friends, he remains someone whose culture is unknown to his friends. I wanted him to be comfortable in his culture. As an Indian, I wanted him to be comfortable in the skin, in his own identity. And so I became a storyteller in his class, in the library, at any opportunity that I got outside of the Indian people itself. Also, I became a storyteller. And from then on, that has continued in many ways in Singapore, and also I've gone on to do storytelling workshops. Also, a course in storytelling also has happened, and even now I continue doing online workshops or in-person workshops in storytelling. And my whole aim is connecting to culture through storytelling. And connecting to culture is because our identity is as a self, as me as an individual, but our identity is me as a family member, me as a social, this cultural member, and as a civilizational. And what better way of connecting to that except through stories. So that is what I try to bring through the storytelling workshop. How do you connect? How do you enhance the sense of self and connection to the culture as a bigger? So, so with Tṛtīya, I'd be available in whatever way that would, you'd going forward. I loved when Indira ji started, and she started with a story. Her on an island, the wise man, and a man who was thought, oh, his knowledge, and he was revered for his knowledge. And then how it went downhill also, and what it tells us, right? So, so that kind of so in any way that is possible, that I can contribute, I would love to. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
My name is Arun Raj. I'm here today as a result of a brief call I received from my close friend, Dr. Rajeev. And I didn't inquire much. And I was told, and I was immediately connected to Hari. And I was told that there's this conclave happening. And it's a very brief conversation, I believe, Hari, which is probably not more than 2 minutes. That's my personality. I don't inquire much. I think it's been a journey where these days, pretty much every conversation or every interaction I have is with like-minded people. I'm very, very focused on the right energies. We have been very fortunate with my life where, for some reason, I only get connected to good people and good satsang. So didn't inquire much. I said, yeah, it's a working day, but I said I'll make it. In terms of background, I'm an engineer by profession. Graduated in 1994 from the College of Engineering, Trivandrum, and pretty much spent most of my career in the Western world, in the US and the UK. Technology by profession in the information technology. But I always had, I don't know, I never couldn't articulate much, but I always had a very, very deep inner calling for Bharat. And at those days, I didn't know. But back in the .com days when I was based in New York, and my mother had an accident, and I just dropped everything and came back to India. And all of my friends at the time said, back in those 1999, 2000, you had to make the biggest mistake of your life, to just throw away your, green card and come back to India. And I didn't have any comms. I said, this is the right thing to do. Came back and spent some time with my mother, and she fully recovered. She had a pretty bad accident, and at one stage, we thought we'd lose her, but the kind of love and affection we had got her back into life. And then I decided I'll be staying back in India. But again, destiny when I was sent an assignment to the UK for 6 months, but ended up living there for again another 17, 18 years. And back in 2016, again, the inner calling, when I left a corporate job, I decided that it's time to start something on my own. And I knew that there's no other place but than India. So moved back to India in 2017, and I run an artificial intelligence data science company focusing on cybersecurity. And I've got three other co-founders, all Britishers, pretty senior people, because we deal in cybersecurity and, it's a kind of complex area. So my co-founders are all very senior British bureaucrats. One was the director of the intelligence agency there. But I back to this, my kind of confidence in the Indian, kind of not just the engineering ability or our leadership, the kind of dharmic way of building a corporate. So we are considering setting something up in a place like Cambridge because we are all about mathematicians and data science. But I was the one who said, no, I think we should give it a completely different perspective. Let's do it in India. And there was a bit of reluctance at the time, but I said, trust me, we'll get this right. And that's what we did. We are on 150 data scientists based in Kochi Info Park. Extremely highly, we are a very valued company. Value and valuation is one dimension is the monetary value, but we build a very, very beautiful place for young people to come and fulfill their desire and prove to be, So that's my professional journey. And through the last coming back to India, I starting to realize now that was destiny. And my first thing I did when I came back to India was there was an inner calling to go to Tiruvannamalai, and I am a big follower of Ramana. And the same question as the speaker said, this whole inquiry around who am I, this whole identities that we put on ourselves, the gender, the caste, and the age. I think I'm started to seriously ponder. I haven't found an answer yet, but has taken me to a lot of places, including a good set of people around me where we constantly meet up on satsang and do Advaita and Vedanta. And my mother-in-law is a big influence. She's a big follower of Chinmaya Ashram, and she's Vedanti as well. So I think to me personally, I think on one side, from professionally, I believe India and the Indian leadership has significant contribution to the new world. And in a small way, I've established that we could actually, do that in what I'm doing in terms of application of advanced mathematics and data science and cyber, and helping some of the global Fortune 500 companies deal with advanced threat means that we have proven in a smaller level that we have the leadership and the innovation critical thinking ability to do things. So I'm very keen back to how can I contribute if there's a space for contributing to with my journey around how to establish those good thought process and leadership. And so essentially, we have built certain capabilities in India that doesn't exist in Silicon Valley either, in terms of the way of thinking. And at the heart of what we do is, even though it's mathematics, much more than it's more about critical thinking and kind of thinking deeply around how human behaviors and how human machine interface. So that's one area where I would like to contribute if there's an opportunity to really, in assignments where I can bring some of those experience. At a personal level, as I said, very keen to be part of any groups which is, keen to pursue, Advaita, Vedanta, and to share my knowledge, but also more than anything, learn from people around. So that's another area where I'm very keen. If there are occasions to share our insights and share our experience, I'll be very, very keen to. Thank you.
Good evening or good afternoon. My name is Dr. Shailaja Menon. I'm very happy that there is so many Chinmaya connections, because I look around and there are a lot of Chinmaya connections starting from you, in fact. So a little bit about me before why I'm interested. I was born in Ernakulam, and like Professor Indira said, at home. But I grew up in Delhi. And so my earliest and maybe the most profound influences were the influences I got from living in a neighborhood in Delhi where it was from different parts of the country. So I really didn't have the sense of that I'm a Hindu, first of all, to be honest. I really didn't, because my closest friend was a Parsi, and the closest friend of my parents were Kannada Brahmins. We had Sindhis to our left. We had Bengalis a bit, two houses away. My father was a bureaucrat, part of the early breed of bureaucrats in India. So, you know, that breed of people in the early, 50s, 60s, they were a very different kind. They were more honest. They were more hardworking. They didn't have this me, my kind of a thing, really. So that is the kind of influence I was exposed to, because the people around me were also like that, but from different backgrounds. So I was very unconsciously absorbing all those influences. The consciousness of being a Hindu came when my family got involved with Swami Chinmayananda. Swamiji, in fact, was from Ernakulam, and he was distantly related to my family. He used to come and stay in our house when he used to come to Ernakulam. So that very close contact with him meant that I absorbed a lot of those influences. That consciousness of being a Hindu, of being an Indian, actually came from that learning. But unconsciously, of what an Indian meant, I got to know as a child, when I got to have all these different Indians from all other parts of the country as my closest family friends, really. And I've kept in touch with them till now, by the way. So you can see how deep that influence is. After that, of course, I came, my father went to the Caribbean. And again, it was a kind of a culture shock, because that is how what it meant to be a girl, to be treated equally by boys. And so that also was an influence. So when I came back to India, I had all these things together. And I joined the school which my aunt started. My aunt was Swamiji's earliest disciple here, began the Chinmaya mission in Ernakulam and Kerala, began the school here, then the college. In fact, Chinmaya Tripunantra came just after Ernakulam was started. And so those, I joined the family. I mean, it was like a family concern, really, but it was working for Swamiji, really. So again, it was service, and it is also how to absorb Indic knowledge. And that's my interest, actually, in what you began. I'm no longer connected with the Chinmaya institutions. After school, we began the college. Now, my cousins and I, we began our own school, Tattva, and we have a curriculum which is based on Indian ethos. It's called 5 Elements. So from class 6, 7, 8, we teach all the subjects through 5 elements. So whether it's space, it'll be astronaut. Whether it is air, we'll be so we do everything: the geography, physics, chemistry, maths. Everything is through the 5 elements. Class 9, they have to go to the board thing, of course. But my interest was that in this. So I came because of Rajeev, by the way. Rajeev is a very dear friend of mine. And if he asked me, I wouldn't have said no, really. But this is an area of interest, because how do we incorporate Indic knowledge to our school curriculum? And I'm very interested in that, truly interested. Mathematics, that it's taught through songs. Through gestures, mudras. Our teacher does things like that. So I'm just giving an example of what we do. But the other thing of the area of interest is, you said behavioral patterns. And that is a deep interest, because you see, everyone talks about Japan, the Japanese, but they are taught as school children. They're not taught the alphabet. They're not taught the letters first. They are taught how to behave. They are taught how do you socially interact with others. I would like that to be a part of our, the linkage between knowledge and behavioral patterns. So that's the core area of my interest, really. I won't take any time longer. Thank you.
So my name is Sundar, and this is coming at a very appropriate time. In 2015, Arundhati and I relocated from Singapore to Kerala to work on the Chinmaya University project. And the Chinmaya University project is really at a more macro level to really integrate Indian knowledge systems and contemporary knowledge systems. we've had our challenges, and we are now in the eighth academic year. And we're now getting into the same space, which is the management, education, that kind of thing. And how do we integrate? In that, we have some great inspiration. First, let me just go back to what Swami Chinmayananda himself did. So, and I know this is not a new story to anybody, but in 1951, he really revolutionized the teaching of Shastra in India by going to the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads first, and then the Bhagavad Gita at a verse by verse level in English, and without any restraints on who listens to his teaching. So if I were to think about, and I was fortunate enough to be in the Balvihar and then really encounter his teaching by the time I was in college. And if I were to think of what he accomplished, he set out his problem statement in two basic steps. First was that India as a whole has started turning away from roots. And so he sees his job as turning us back to our roots. And one revolutionary way in which he did it, rather than have students go to the Himalayas to study, he said, I will bring it down to the cities and towns and villages. So that was one. The second problem statement, which he was very clear about, is that change can happen only at an individual level. Any change, no matter whether it is, the large revolutions that we know of in history, or whether it is the individual transformation that happened, it only happens at the individual level. Everybody starts off as a single person, starting off the struggle, and slowly, because of their transformation, others join into the struggle. When we come into this space, our problem statement cannot be as simple as the second one, right? Because, and this is where I was very inspired by the gentleman who spoke about leadership lessons from Vedas, Itihasa, Purana, etc. I definitely like to know more and follow up with you on some of that. Because the challenge is, like everyone here outside in the world, the moment, let's say the CEO of a company screws up that company completely, and he is a student either of graduate of Harvard Business School or IIM Ahmedabad, let's say. Not one commentator is going to say this is a failure of Harvard Business School or is a failure of IIM Ahmedabad, right? They're going to say that this individual didn't know what he was doing or knew what he was doing and had unrealistic expectations, whatever, did not manage his people. The problem when we get into this mix is that first, we motivate the people who come to us enough to say that I am what I am because of this education. Like what all of us have said. So if I were to look at the Chinmaya Mission as a whole, there are many successful people in Chinmaya Mission, and a large number of them are willing to say openly without any hesitation that it is Swami Chinmayananda's influence that made them what they are. So therefore, that problem statement, the individual statement, is very easy. Now, when I say whether through Chinmaya University or through Tṛtīya, right, I have trained a number of people. First, that these people have to be motivated enough and rooted enough to say, I am what I am because of this. And then, inevitably, there are going to be successes and failures. When the successes come, hopefully they are attributed to this. When the failures come, how do we not get impacted by somebody saying, Arey, wo to Chinmaya gaya. He doesn't know how to run a business because he didn't go to IIM Ahmedabad or IIM Calcutta or any of those things. So this is something, and the reason why I bring it up is because in this space, we have to deal with the challenge of terminology, right? Take a simple thing like meditation. Today, meditation is on everybody's lips, right? Insurance is willing to pay for meditation courses in some cases, right? And companies are saying, okay, we'll undertake meditation as a way of improving employee wellness, etc. But the moment we come at it from a dharma and a shastra perspective, we are faced with a whole range of definitions of what meditation is. And so therefore, what do we, whether it is Chinmaya Vishwavidyapeeth or Tṛtīya or Chanakya or any of the other institutions that are trying to work in this space, how do we come to that level of understanding where we only set a minimum bar, we don't set a deep bar. That is only Vedantic, Advaitic, Vedantic meditation, that is meditation. If we do that, then we run into problems. But if we make it so broad that everything from, the non-dharmic mindfulness itself is defined, that also is a challenge. And then we are also faced in this environment, and Dr. Indira Parikh and Sushanta and everybody else, we're faced with the world of metrics. How do we bring in metrics that let these same individuals and us prove that we are having an impact? The material is there, and that's why that gentleman who spoke about leadership lessons from various things is a great thing. Taking that material, morphing it into modules that can be taught in a classroom and come up with activities is work. I'm sure all of you are very capable of doing it. I have no question about that. I'm asking collectively us, how do we answer the metrics question? So this is something that I would like us to, I know this is not the time we're going to solve that problem, but this is a challenge we have to take forward. It's the same thing that I know that in Chinmay Vishwavidyapith will face the same challenges. So I just want to bring that. And I think it's worthwhile a few of us collectively describing that problem statement so that the same few individuals, whether it is Professor Mahadevanji in IIM Bangalore or any of these other people who are working in this space, can come up with an answer that we all buy into, and then we have a common macro view to work with, not a micro. Micro view, we will never be the same. We should never be the same. But at a macro level, the parameters are set. That's the challenge that I pose in front of this. By the way, this Tṛtīya name, I liked it because I'm not sure what the source is in the Shastra, and maybe some of you know this, but I think in the Bhashya, in the Shankara Bhashya, sometimes it comes, the statements uses kartum shakyam, akartum shakyam, anyatha va kartum shakyam. Today, when we look at the world, we are unfortunately faced, we are forced to see it as if it is a polarity, that there is the Hindutva orthodoxy and there is everybody else who's intelligent, right? And therefore, anybody who is on the Hindutva fold will fail if they come onto this side, and nobody from this side can go that side, right? Whereas this statement in the Bhashya says, no, there is a third view. It is not a polarity. There is freedom is doing what you want to do. Freedom is also not doing what everybody is telling you to do. And freedom is exploring the third step, which is Tṛtīya. So welcome to this space. Thank you.
Namaste to all. I'm Rajeev. By profession, I'm an Ayurvedic doctor. My journey goes like this. I have been introduced to an organization called Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh from my childhood, which has shaped me and which has given me the idea of social responsibility, which goes up and down, but is still there all the time throughout. Due to personal issues, you may stop for a while, but it comes back to you in different ways from which you cannot escape. So I found that, yes, this call from the nation, the culture is always there, to which we have no choice but to yield. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, good evening to all of you. Hopefully we will find out an Indic way of greeting people instead of good morning, good afternoon, and good evening soon. Thanks to Hari. And really feeling privileged to come here just by being virtue of Hari's friend. So my journey, I will begin how I came here, and a bit about me, that I'm a startup evangelist, a startup advisor. I facilitate advisory to upcoming startups and fundings, government schemes and all that. And then now I have started my own startup, a startup platform where I have some of my own projects. In the process of this long journey, I realized that all of us are startups. I'm a startup of 8th May 1973, but was my parents' a startup. And after some time, the seed funding got over, and I got into Series A, and they moved out of the stakeholding and left me alone to fund for myself and fend for myself. This journey, as we were talking about, has multiple phases. The present part of the journey started day before yesterday in Delhi. In the evening, I landed in Bombay at 8 o'clock in the night, and 5 a.m. flight I took to Kochi and came here. Tomorrow I'm going to Kottayam, and in the evening I'm going to Coimbatore and Tirupur the next day for a startup venture that I'm starting. It's more of an adventure than venture. But these journeys are all parts of multiple journeys that we have started since 8th May 1973, the divine journey through which I landed upon this planet. The longest journey, I'm coming to these cocktail scattered cameos that you can say. I was born in Basti, a small place. It's Shravas, very near to Shravasti, where Buddha was born. The pity is that when I started introducing myself, and why I say pity, both my grandfathers were freedom fighters. And they gave us a free India, but not a free Bharat. And so at multiple places, I will try to introduce myself by telling the name of a big town that is near Basti, that I was born up in Allahabad, that people can identify. Yeah. Then when I finally came up to Basti, I would say that, oh, it's 40 kilometers from where Buddha was born, Shravasti. It took me just last year, can you believe, that I got to know that Muni Vasishtha, Rishi Vasishtha, had his ashram in Basti. How does it happen in this India, free India? I don't know. And then it took me 3 years back to realize that AUM is a part of the spelling of my name, Saum. And suddenly I started feeling divine. Okay. These are all symbols, and general, may or may not mean really much. But even symbolically, we have not been able to get the Indic elements in our life here and there, where we are born. Okay, what does it mean? So I'm from Prayag, but I grew up calling it Allahabad all the time, till 2 years back. Okay. And Prayag, that Tirthraj Prayag would sound to us that, oh, it's like a very complicated term. Let us tell people Allahabad or something like that. And so these are those symbolic nomenclature kind of things. And then the startup idea also gave to me that startups are all about, when you start doing startups, people are like looking at it, it's like a hawk aggression that, oh, what is the market space? Capture it here and there and wherever. But then my journey was like when I was born in Shravasti, we went to study in Mizoram. My father was a professor of economics and head of department later. So I understood economics in a certain context, which was only education, no application. A lot of people got churned out. And so when I joined MBA later, my father was kind of ashamed to tell people that this man is doing MBA. For him, I should have been a teacher and thing. And MBA is a very, very superficial kind of thing. 3 years in Mizoram, among tribal, mostly Christian tribal. And very oddly, all my teachers were from Kottayam, the brothers and sisters in Montfort School. So I had a Kottayam connection long back. It's only tomorrow I'm going to meet the people there. So this is, I think the madam was telling about connecting the dots, how the dots keep on connecting here and there. Hari also, I met in a Lego facilitation toy workshop. And that's how we became known to each other. And then he invited me for Tṛtīya. A totally out of the way connection. Okay. And how I went for that workshop, there was a corporate trainer friend of mine. She had called me for some logo and how to design a corporate training workshop. You relate to that, what to put and how to put. And then she told me that there's something called Lego toys serious play training. That the Lego toys bricks are used, but it is done for boardroom people and for big managers and all. You'd like to do that. And by the way, I know Hari before I know him. Because 3-4 years before I really met you at the workshop, she had told me that there are 2 people who hold corporate training workshops with the Mahabharat and all things. And the 2, what was the other person? Varun, no. So she had mentioned about Hari and one more person, that they do a workshop. And then I met him in the Lego Toys workshop. Okay. And then he invites me here. Otherwise, I would not have gone to Kottayam. Now, again, why I'm telling you all these scattered stories, because this is how the chaos the world works. And then somebody puts it together. A PowerPoint presentation, a structured presentation, anybody can give. Okay. From Mizoram, we got to Shillong. Okay. I studied 7 years there. Then I got into IT Roorkee for a master's 3 years program. And then I dropped out. And in typical that I was made to feel so small for dropping out. If only right now, like that is my calling card that I'm a dropout from IIT. Okay. And that time I did not know about all these dropouts. Otherwise, I would have felt inspired that good, I dropped out, now I'll do something in life. But everybody around me made me feel small about it. Okay. Then I took a Spanish course in DU, 6 months. Then I got into Indian Institute of Foreign Trade for a 2 years program. Now all my sins were forgiven. That beta is now doing MBA. And it's 95, 97. Now, which is where I'm coming to the final Indic thing. So my first assignment was after passing out, which I barely managed to do, was with German embassy, how to promote export of India. Okay, it's a very rare program that embassies normally send what we can import from them, but this German embassy program was about how to export things out of India. We visited many clusters, Moradabad and the Sari and all those apparels and all clusters. And everywhere they would tell us traditional things to be how to be marketed to NRIs. Now, today I was talking to ma'am here, Indu ma'am. Okay. We didn't have the confidence that we can market our things to non-NRIs also. Why can't Indian cultural items can be marketed to non-NRI foreign people? They only see this set of people, so this is only for NRIs. And we believed it. We said, you're right. Okay. Now we think that sarees can be marketed to foreigners too. Thanks to ISKCON and all these Chinmay missions which have gone outside. Foreigners are buying sari, but you need to push for it, all that. Where I now coming to it, having learned all these things, especially export, I did extensive consulting into MSMEs across clusters with export. Yeah, with the MSMEs across clusters. Okay, how the small items and all can be marketed from here to abroad. Now the next wave came of startups. This is where we have a hope. The new mindset people who don't have a baggage from the past, they take risks. They see the entire world as Indian, like one India, global India. Herein we can market and devise products, be it Indic education, because online the costs of reaching out is less. As you were talking about the school, we can probably do an online school where at least people get introduced to the concept. Okay, and especially I get a lot of requests from my own relatives and everyone that how do we tell them about Indian culture, Indian way of learning. Okay, so the new set of startups, I think, are the way forward. And this is where the Indic contributions of having a plugin to tell the startups what is the Indian culture. Okay. For example, I tried my poor best by converting this IIFT incubator. We call it a startup hub of IIFT. And I renamed IIFT as Inclusion, Innovation, Funding and Technology. I said, if you talk of inclusion, it by default becomes Indian in a way, because every other culture has things about niche. It's India where inclusion comes as the first thing itself. Okay. And that is really Indic. You think, well, what is that one thing I am doing is applicable to everybody. Then start innovating. The normal trend is ki fund kisme available hai, which schemes is available. Okay. At the moment you start that, you will start force fitting your product to that particular fund. Choose technologies accordingly. The initial thought of innovation, inclusion, innovation, funds and technology, and then start a matrix of startups. Okay. And there also we follow 3C metrics, connect the dots, crack the course, then call to action. Typically you make a call to action and you start connecting the dots based on the call to action. So now if we follow this methodology, if we are connecting the dots indically, that what is the indic element that we can first put into these dots, that will come into the process of cracking the code. And then accordingly, it will have some call to action. One example I was giving to Indu ma'am a while back, I just met her here only. That this handloom thing, we are creating a gift card. We call it GIIFT again, the gift card, because IFT DNA has to be there. Having corrupted it by the Indic interpretation of it, so we call it gift card. Now, supposing I'm going to meet somebody or go back from Kochi, there should be something available on this gift card, which is very, very ethnic Indic, which I can just buy and give. So this kind of startup or innovations and platforms which have an access have to be created. That is what the collaboration we can look forward to. So for example, I'm going to Tirupur to talk of t-shirts. So one of the t-shirts series and gallery I'm launching is a 700 t-shirt of Gita series, each with one stroke of Gita. That you can wear if you want to wear on a particular day. Like today, I just put on this kurta because Indic lag raha hai thoda sa. If I had a t-shirt with a Gita shlok there, and a QR code where I can just scan it and get to a video of Chinmay or whichever organization, which tells me something about that, I'll like flaunting that t-shirt. So one of these series is that 700 shloks on a Gita that we are launching. And then a series of things, Indic symbols. We don't even know what Indic symbols are. Om is swastik. That is the first thing that people will say. So these kind of educative series, I thought, should be available in the market. So this is one of the projects that I'm doing, which can go Indic in a certain way. And more I learn from Hari and his extended family, because he has corrupted my mind with Indic virus. Okay. So, and I don't even want an antidote for it. Okay. Open to those viruses keep coming out. So anyway, thanks a lot. And I'll rather hand over the mic because I will not stop talking. Okay. So let me walk some of the talks. And so
good evening, everyone. I'm Deepa Vinod, basically belong to Thrissur, the cultural capital of Kerala, now settled in Cochin for the past 27, 28 years. And I'm a life coach, both by passion and profession. Now, what made me walk in as a participant amongst you all is this one particular person, a very good friend of mine, and who has always mesmerized me with his knowledge on life, breath, and mindfulness, Dr. Rajeev. So grateful to him for this evening. And now why I'm here, I'm on the lookout for stories from our culture. And being a life coach, I truly believe that though facts tell, it's those stories which take you out of your shell. And being a passionate life coach, I connect with my clients through my stories. And yes, of course, I have grabbed a couple of stories from each of the experiences you have shared here. That's it. Thank you and good evening.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, hello, everybody. Well, I would just like to start with, by saying that, physically, I'm quite a national person because I was born in Bombay and I was raised in Orissa and Bihar. Then I did my post-graduation in Andhra. I got married and then went to Gujarat. So I've been all over India physically. And also, it was in Ahmedabad that after my master's in anthropology that I met Indira through a friend of mine. When I came to know that Indira was looking for someone to work for a handloom project. And that was my tryst with the handloom industry, actually. And currently, I'm a social entrepreneur. In the field of handloom. It all goes to my starting of my career with the handloom industry. And handloom project with Indira. And let me tell you, while I was a student in school, I was always a backbencher. In school, in college, everywhere, I was never a front bencher. And I keep telling all the backbenchers nowadays whom I meet, I tell them, look, there is something, that we should be backbenchers, I think, finally end up with more opportunities and with more avenues because they look for avenues, okay? Now, those who are front benchers, okay, they have a goal, they have a target, and they follow that, and they just go on one track. But those who are the backbenchers always, who feel that they have not reached anywhere, but somewhere they'll be always looking for some avenues and goals. So backbenchers should never get disheartened. I keep telling all the students in schools and colleges, if they feel that they're not doing well, I said, look, you will do well because the classroom is not, school is not your classroom. Your final classroom is the world. You go out and you learn and you find avenues for yourself. And that is exactly me, Like once I started working with Indira, as she said, she had conducted certain women managers program. And that's where, that was a big eye-opener for me because she let me and my two of our subordinates also attend that program, And that was such an eye-opener. I feel that, look, whatever level we are in our life, we all have something bothering us, something, troubling us that we are all fighting day in and day out, for our identity, for our, for our well-being, for our survival. It's a constant battle, okay, going on. So that's where I kind of realized that, being up there is not all that rosy. Everybody goes through the same kind of a turmoil in life. And I've also had an opportunity to attend 2 personal growth laboratories with Indira. And that was, I was just telling
your name, I forget. Yeah, well, and that I was just telling her, look, I mean, those laboratories, Indira, I feel was the life coach for me. Because you see, I mean, you are sitting there with certain people, sharing your experiences, I mean, sharing your, I mean, negative feelings, and then, what is blocking you from going ahead, your weaknesses, your strengths to certain people, and then we're all sharing with each other, and we're all acting like sounding boards each other, and that really helped. I think that really helped all of us to sort of, come out of certain situations that we are in, and and come out with a very positive energy after such labs. So so those 2-3 labs also helped me a lot in my own personality development, and that's where I realized that that the world can be your school and you can go forward much higher than what you think. And okay, then it so happened that after the handloom project back in IIM, I worked for 10 more years in various other projects. Then from IIM Ahmedabad, I went to Kuwait. I was there for 15 years, where again I was seen. I mean, I worked in the field of demography, doing a lot of population studies, understanding that culture there. So basically, it's my anthropology master's which really helped me, have a checkered career, with all kinds of topics. Then finally, when I got retired and came back to settle in Kerala, that's when I thought, okay, why not revisit the same handloom weaving unit, which I had interviewed for Indira's first project we had done together. So that's when it struck to me that, why not really do something, rather than, I mean, okay, rather than what was mentioned in the book. So that's when I started this social enterprise of working with Kerala handloom weavers. I mean, okay, like we never started, I mean, like I never had a weaving unit or anything, but we collaborated with the existing local weaving units. And my daughter, when who had just finished a graphic design, was also with me. And she said, okay, why don't we just think of rebranding the Kerala Tort, the Kerala, that very rustic fabric, which is called the Tort, because it's such a multi-utility fabric. Why don't we rebrand it and give it a glamour quotient and make it a global product? So that for the past 15 years, we've been on that, working on that, successfully working on that. And it has hit some of the biggest retail stores of the US. And so that's where we feel, totally gratified that we could really, I mean, work on something and see that it could, that all the effort could percolate down to the weavers. And so much so that year before last, our project was identified by the state government of Kerala, and I was made the member of the planning board of Kerala State Planning Board in the non-traditional industry, especially in the handloom sector, because they found that like our business model of developing handlooms and making it a global product was something we should really, try to, I mean, expand in Kerala. So currently I'm in the planning board as a member, and that was the most gratifying, sort of moment, because I felt, okay, all this effort didn't go waste. Starting from writing the book with Indira till now, it's completed a full circle. So that is my story in short. And also, I would like to tell you one more thing. See, Indira, okay, very rarely, you have, I mean, project heads who would include, I mean, I was a research assistant then, just a research assistant then, who would include a research assistant's name as a co-author in a book that is being published. So Indira, I must really thank you for that, because that gave me so much of confidence to be included in that, for my name to be made a co-author in that book, So all these little measures of, working with her just added to my confidence, and she's always been my role model, and that's about it. Thank you.
So thank you everyone for sharing your journeys and inspirations, as well as how you feel connected and motivated to be part of the journey with Tṛtīya. We don't have too much time to reflect back on some of the themes that all of you shared, but I would like to just state that some of the things that I heard, like for instance, you were speaking about leadership models in the corporate space, or about the challenge with matrix when it comes to this kind of work, or integrating IKS with schools. I think there are a bunch of ideas and other things that we have discussed, and we would like to also take forward with all of you as we proceed. So I would like to very briefly state some of the things that we intend to do before we close for tea. So as this journey began with that meeting with Indira around women's leadership and helping women professionals show up as a whole person. So one of our first offerings that we intend to offer is on a women's leadership program, tentatively planned for September end in Bombay. It will be an open forum, which is free for any women professional, especially if they are in the leadership team or senior management, to attend. And eventually, we are looking at a 3-day immersive leadership development program for the women leaders. And that will be in Ahmedabad, most likely in November. So if you know of any women professionals or leaders who might benefit from this experience, please leave your contact here. We will be sending you the information, or if you're catching up this online, please write to us at trtīyafoundation@gmail.com. Once we upload this video, we'll give the email and other details along with it. And we will revert with the exact date and venue for the open forum in September. And that will be a good beginning. And in the 3-day immersion, Indira ma'am will be also taking each of them through the leadership matrix and mapping of their leadership styles, and we'll be working with it. Apart from that, we are also having one online program which we intend to launch with Sushant next year, called Swadhyaya.
I've not spoken about this earlier. So for the benefit of all the guests that we have, there is an old practice which the traditional name is called Brahma Muhurt practice. And in Sikhism, this has been called the Amrit Bela. What happens is that the early hours of the sunrise, just before sunrise and just at sunrise time, the sloping rays of the sun that hits us, the daylight, is a very interesting time when our entire system, our entire consciousness actually operates at a different level. Let me give some clue as to what this change is. This is a time, for instance, if you measure your blood sugar before that particular point of time, between 3:30 and 5:30, if we all take our blood sugar before and after that, you will find that there's a significant release of your blood sugar rises. Why? Because the body is getting ready in order to be able to take action that's called for it in the daytime. All right? This happens without our volition. Likewise, in the evening around sunset, the body starts releasing melatonin, getting you ready for darkness, to be able to sleep and to be able to take rest. So in a sense, everything that's happening in our body, a large part of us, things happening in the body is actually being run by nature. So we are completely immersed in Prakriti, in nature, and that's also where our consciousness is. At this point of time in the day, just before sunrise, our consciousness starts operating and acquiring intelligence of a very high order, which we can use then to become the drashta of our own lives and make changes therefrom. Very serious changes. And these serious changes can be as serious as somebody warding off a life-threatening autoimmune disease. This can be as serious as somebody breaking an old pattern which even therapy has not been able to touch. All right. I personally have gained from it enormously after 26 years of being diabetic on regular medication. Along with diabetes medication comes also hypertension and cholesterol problems, so statin. Once I've gone through this exercise, I have actually been able to work on the psychology of it individually on my own, by myself, with slight prompts, such that such huge changes can take place in our worlds. This is to be called the Brahma Muhurt practice. I understand there are some apps that are going around. What I have in mind is to develop an app, and I need technology support for that. Actually, that's the entire block which I'm facing, challenge which I'm facing now, is to be able to convert this into an app-based program, which can be then used by individuals who buy into this program to work on their own. So the app gives you instructions the night before, and in the morning, you wake up at whatever time suits you, not necessarily earlier than 4:30 and not beyond 5:36, and do some activities and tasks that are given to you through this, to examine yourself, to look at the story of your life, and to make changes in your thinking about yourself. And it can have dramatic results, and in the long run is a great healthful practice. And this health is not only physical health, but also significant mental and physical health, right? I'm convinced that if this becomes a worldwide practice globally, wars will come to an end. Wars will not be necessary, because this practice actually stimulates, strengthens, and helps activate the third eye, the Tṛtīya.
So thank you, Sushant. So we'll be sharing in more detail of each of these in a brochure format very soon enough. And all of you have a form on the table with request for your contact details. If you can fill it up. We'll also be sending over a book that Indira has written on Indian women and inner dialogue. It's a very landmark book published in 1989. So that we'll courier it to you if you share your postal address on that. And so just to conclude from my end, apart from these programs, we will also be hosting regular podcasts and webinars and samvads online. And we do have a WhatsApp community that we just created. So I'll be sending over the QR code for that so that you can join it. And we can take forward the discussions and everything in the online space and very soon enough in the offline spaces. On that note, I would like to invite Indira ma'am to share anything more if she feels about the Women's Leadership Program, and then vote of thanks. Thank you.
the women's program will largely focus on women's identity and women's femininity, because femininity has been lost out and womanhood has become very strong, and how to look good, how to dress good, the glam part of it has become very important. So one has to now explore the inner femininity and the inner positivity of the women. That's the program. I also take this opportunity to continue to say that what started out with Hari's meeting with me ended up with 4 founder members, and now this whole group who has taken their time off, and you have come here to be part of this. So we are growing, and I would like to thank you very much for being part of this group and being part of us and having trusted in us to come and say it would be important what we do. So you have all come and spent your time here. And I would like to end with the last 4 lines of the story, which I started, that knowledge makes you either a god or a demon, but not a human being. Then the question is, what should a man do? The answer is there are oughts for men and women and not shoulds and should nots. So the important part is not to defy, not to deny, but define, not to resist, not to desist, but persist. So what in Tṛtīya we are doing is defining and persisting with what we have started on our journey. So thank you all very much for joining us in our journey and sharing your journeys of your life, which is very important for us to share with us. You have trusted us with your stories of your life, your struggles, your dilemmas. So we thank you very much. And because it is not a by chance meeting, it is a destined, it is destined to be so. So our path shall meet again and again and again, and hope we shall add more people who will join in our journey. Thank you very much, and God bless us all. Thank you.